As curator of Beyond the Brotherhood, the Pre-Raphaelite Legacy, staged at Southampton City Art Gallery and the Russell-Cotes Art Gallery and Museum in 2019-2020, I would like to reflect upon the trials and tribulations of mounting a major exhibition. Beyond the Brotherhood was made possible by a generous loan from the Western Trust that ensures that funding is made available to borrow works of art from major London institutions. This enabled me to enhance the collections held at Southampton and by the Russell-Cotes with important loans from the Royal Academy and Tate Britain. It was a huge privilege to work on this project, which was 3 years in the making. There have been many Pre-Raphaelite exhibitions. How could I say anything new about them? An exhibition isn't just about getting a load of paintings and hanging them on a wall. One needs to have a story to tell, new ideas to put forward, challenge our preconceptions. And I wanted to challenge the idea that Pre-Raphaelitism was a dead letter. We're always told that the avant-garde is all about French art, naturalism, impressionism, post-impressionism, surrealism, and by comparison the Pre-Raphaelites seem to be very British, very insular and even parochial. But our ideas about Pre-Raphaelitism were challenged by the exhibition held at Tate Britain in 2012 entitled Pre-Raphaelite Avant-Garde. But I wanted to go even further than that and suggest that Pre-Raphaelitism is in fact a living tradition. So I have traced Pre-Raphaelitism from the original Brotherhood, founded in 1848. The key members were John Everett Millais, William Holman Hunt and Dante Gabriel Rossetti. My example here from that first generation is by Forge Maddox Brown and shows an image from Shakespeare's King Lear. This is followed by the rather stunning painting by Burne-Jones from the Perseus series, all 10 live in Southampton, and that was to represent second generation Pre-Raphaelites. Maxwell Armfield was to represent third generation Pre-Raphaelites. Not only is he following in the tradition of Burne-Jones, but he's painting in tempera. And that's where most exhibitions end. They end with taking Pre-Raphaelitism up to the First World War. However, I wanted to go one step further and suggest that you could take Pre-Raphaelitism into the post-Second World War era through the fantasy arts of Alan Lee and Brian Froud, and the illustrations for Lord of the Rings and the films. And here is Kieran Belshaw's concepts for Game of Thrones. He worked on the last 3 series of the television blockbuster, which ended 2019. This is the not so private view at Southampton City Art Gallery. As you can see, there's a buzz of expectation in the air. People love going to exhibitions and they are the lifeblood of our art galleries and museums. We need to get you back. Our permanent collections are really important as they enable us to lend to each other to create new shows. So here we are in the first gallery admiring the very carefully worked out hang. And this room was to tell the first part of my story, the original Brotherhood. A lot of people are very confused by the term Pre-Raphaelite, but really it's not as hard as it sounds. It simply means that you like art before Raphael. Raphael died in 1520, so essentially the Pre-Raphaelites like the art before Raphael. That's anything from the Italian Quattrocento, 1400s, and also anything from the same era from Flanders. Their favourite artists were Jan van Eyck, Roger van der Weyden and Memling from the north, and from the south, Masaccio, Filippo Lippi, Botticelli. So that gives you a good idea of exactly where they're coming from. They basically look back to go forward. And the idea was to tell a sort of linear story through the three main galleries at Southampton. However, here's what the gallery looked like just a few days before. Plenty of detritus, all the packing that's necessary to protect these works during transit. Their delicate frames are a constant worry, and they are often have their own individually made packing cases, and they have to be transported using air con and air ride. The budget is significantly eaten into by transport and insurance, but we're lucky at Southampton that we have government indemnity. The scaffolding is to change the lights. None of these works would look good, and you wouldn't stop to look at them if they were not lit properly. Here's the next gallery, and as you can see, we've moved to a rather charming lavendery purple colour. We chose that dark red because that's a traditional colour for hanging Victorian paintings. We wanted to differentiate the different parts of the story with the different background colour. So we've moved now into second generation Pre-Raphaelites, which includes a whole section devoted to women. You can also see we are in the throes here of organising a cabinet, and the cabinet was for arts and crafts pieces and a book illustration. The stars of this section were undoubtedly loans from Tate Britain and the Royal Academy. Tate Britain loaned us the one on the left, which is Frank Dixie's Harmony, which I regard as a key work for the assimilation of Pre-Raphaelite values into the Royal Academy. What do I mean by Pre-Raphaelite values? Not only is it very beautifully and very tightly painted, it has all the romance that the Pre-Raphaelites favoured, a medieval setting. It's also really a painting of nothing. It's making a connection between the eye and music, hence its title, Harmony. And then our pin-up girl for the Russell-Cotes leg of the exhibition is Frank Cadogan Cowper's Vanity, a wonderful confection again, in a feast for the eye, all those colours and textures, and also it's warning you of the brevity of beauty. So this is the section devoted to women artists who really flourish in the third generation of Pre-Raphaelitism, and the cabinet in front continues that theme, as it contains book illustrations by Eleanor Fortescue Brookdale and various enamel pieces which were on loan from the Russell-Cotes. And then moving into the third of the large galleries, we have on the far wall a selection of works by the Brotherhood of Ruralists. And here my argument was that Pre-Raphaelitism enjoyed a revival in the 1970s. You can link it to the flower power of the era, and the Brotherhood of Ruralists, named by Laurie Lee, tried to revive the spirit of what the Pre-Raphaelites had stood for back in the mid-19th century. The case in the centre here has a selection of books with illustrations by Alan Lee and Brian Froud. Here we are in the same gallery but a few days before, and I'm preparing that cabinet with books illustrated by Alan Lee of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And on the wall behind you can see a selection of artwork relating to these projects. And the final room was given over to Kieran Belshaw's digital art for Game of Thrones. For fans, you can recognise Daenerys Targaryen's magnificent ships on the wall in the background. Now, I knew that hanging the exhibition at the Russell-Cotes would be a challenge. It's a completely different space. You can see here the upper gallery is absolutely crammed with Victorian works of art. And I knew from the outset that I couldn't do that linear progression, Pre-Raphaelites, second generation, third, then into the Ruralists, finally fantasy art, and Kieran's Game of Thrones. It just would not work. So I had to rethink it completely. So we're at the entrance here to the exhibition at the Russell-Cotes, looking at one of our star attractions, a loan from Southampton, Andromeda and Perseus from the Perseus series, with all 10 works in the permanent collection at Southampton. Please do make a note of the motto over the door. As music is to the ear, so is art to the eye. Here we are measuring up using a laser pointer. I think you can see the cross on the green wall for where to place the banners, the lettering, which helps you to understand and interpret the works of art. And I had to think in terms of themes. So the first section on this rather nice plum colour is again explaining exactly what Pre-Raphaelite means. And I've hung a real Italian Renaissance Quattrocento painting next to a work by Joseph Southwell, which not only is in tempera, but actually dates to the 1930s, showing you yet again that Pre-Raphaelitism does not die with the First World War. As we swing round, the next section is given over to Realism, considers the impacts of John Ruskin on Pre-Raphaelitism, truth to nature, and leads into the Ruralists, who were very keen to look back to the Pre-Raphaelites for inspiration. They wanted to imbue their landscapes with spiritual values. The beautiful red background here shows off to great advantage my academic Pre-Raphaelite section with works by John Edward Gregory, Frank Dixie, I think you'll recognise Harmony, and this, a loan from the Royal Academy, an homage to Velasquez by John Everett Millais. On the side wall here is Evelyn de Morgan's amazing Aurora Triumphans. And she leads into the women's section, and you can see here in the background works by Eleanor Fortescue Brickdale and Mrs. Joplin. It's always fun to hang very different paintings next to each other. Both of these are by Maxwell Armfield. Both are in tempera, but they are very different. The one on the left shows strong echoes of Burne-Jones and is in a medieval Pre-Raphaelite style, whereas the one of Central Park, painted while Armfield was in America during the First World War, is very close to genuine Italian primitive painting, being flat and highly stylized. Armfield's paintings were hung in a section devoted to tempera, where the pigment is mixed with egg. Tempera was really popular in the Edwardian period. Artists were attracted to its chalky appearance, which gave the impression of real Quattrocento paintings. Again, a few days earlier, we were organising the lighting for this section of the exhibition to maximise their potential. If you ask me, it looks like dangerous work. And as you go round, you will find some interesting, if not shocking, juxtapositions. Game of Thrones hung next to a work by John Everett Millais, The Bride of Lammermoor, which is a novel by Sir Walter Scott. The idea was to make a link through storytelling, because let's face it, the British do like a good story, particularly one like Game of Thrones, which is full of all sorts of melodramas. Again, another shocking contrast between Frank Dix's beautiful but rather kitsch Romeo and Juliet, a Shakespearean subject, hung next to David Inshaw's beautiful melancholic Ophelia from Hamlet. We have two Ophelias here, one in her madness and one, as you can see, sadly drowning. And then the culmination of the exhibition, works devoted to Lord of the Rings and Hobbit, courtesy of Alan Lee. You might recognise Smaug here and Helm's Deep. And hung very close by, Kieran's digital artwork from the Game of Thrones, Battle of the Bastards, and a link to Smaug. This is Drogon, the lead dragon in Game of Thrones. There's Daenerys Targaryen ships once more. And it was nice hanging Kieran's work next to Alan's, because Kieran told me he was directly inspired by Alan's Black Ships Before Troy, for which he won the Kate Greenaway Prize for Illustrated Children's Books, the highest prize, by the way, that you can achieve. So we've now come to the end of my attempt to explain putting on an exhibition, the logistics, the costs, the transportation, the years of nurturing an exhibition before bringing it to fruition. If COVID hadn't struck, I would have offered lots of walkthroughs, workshops, but just before COVID struck, we were able to have a delightful evening with Alan Lee, who came to see his works hung in the gallery and also to tell us about his career as a book illustrator and his years working on Lord of the Rings and then Hobbit in New Zealand. He was there for some 12 years. It was a chance also for Kieran to meet his idol, if I can put it that way, and here is Alan signing one of his books for him. It was a wonderful evening and a great memory, and hopefully when COVID is over, we'll be able to build some great memories again. Thank you very much. Although the exhibition Beyond the Brotherhood, the Pre-Raphaelite Legacy is now over, you can still enjoy the wonderful array of works that were put together by purchasing the catalogue, which is available from Amazon. You might also be tempted to purchase the Perseus series, another lavishly illustrated catalogue of the 10 paintings held in the permanent collection at Southampton City Art Gallery. Thank you for your time.